Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah M. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Light It Up. I am your host, Dr. Aginah M. So excited about today's episode because I get to talk to a mompreneur. I love talking to moms who are in business because I think they give all of us inspiration to try to tackle our dreams. But today's guest is Mrs. Marquitta Johnson. She is the CEO and owner of House of Divas. She's also an author. So we'll talk about a lot of the work that she's doing and she's embarking upon. And she's also a wife and mom of 3 boys. So we're going to talk about how she's able to balance all that she's doing with wearing so many different hats. Welcome to Light It Up, Marquita. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and just kind of embrace on just speaking on what it really looks like to be a mother, just trying to balance it all. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So for the listening and viewing audience, I had an opportunity to meet you at Tiffany Marie's launch of the Pink Table Talk, which was a few weeks ago. And you were one of the panelists, loved your energy, your responses to the questions. So I said, this is somebody that I want to talk to a little bit more. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you actually got started in the fashion industry?
Phew. Okay. So I'm going to take you back a little bit. Actually, just kind of growing up, I was a teen mom. I moved to Texas, Houston, Texas. My mother's husband at the time was in the military, and I became a teen mom also. So here we go in this generational lifestyle. My mom was 15 when she had her first child, 16 when she had me. So it was almost destined, right? Most people would say the cycle continued. I was also a teen mom at the age of 18. And I was just advocate of shopping. I loved basically going out to the clubs, but at the same time, I was a smart girl. I still had parents that were there that kept me grounded. So I knew right from wrong. I knew budgeting and boundaries. And I was at the register one day and I was like, if I buy this dress and the rest of these accessories, basically what's going to happen is I'm not going to have money for my electricity bill. Then that boils down to me having fun or gas. I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. And I just got tired of always showing up with no one ever knew that when I would go to work, I would have holes in my tights some days. I would have just one pair of jeans to get me through that next paycheck. I would have one pair of work slacks, the work shoes that are just they go with everything, the universal black one with the little buckle on top. I had just one pair of those and a couple of different work shirts that I would have. And no one ever knew that. And so when it was time for me to kind of go out and hang out with my friends, I was cautioned because I had to balance and juggle. Do I want to be responsible or do I want to just for once in my life be a teenager and have fun? So the mindset was one day I just had this crazy idea that if I can get these items wholesale and keep one for myself, I'd always have something to wear. Now, I never seen anyone do this before. I didn't know what a fashionpreneur was. There was no blueprint on how to build your boutique at the time. This was like back in 2012. So there was no mentor for me per se. I just had this eureka light bulb moment that what if I did this, being here from the Chicagoland area, my parents are from Robert Taylor, so they had this hustle mindset. And I saw that and it kind of ignited something in me and it kind of just grew from there. So I was getting one package of clothing a day, well, not a day, but as I could sell them, I was getting clothes in my trunk, selling them out of the trunk of my car. When I would go to school, at college, trying to finish up college, undergrad, people knew that I had clothes because all of my friends and all of the people that I hung around with, I made them my models, like free marketing. Again, all of these things I didn't know that's what I was actually positioning myself to actually do. So then it kind of grew from there. After just kind of seeing that it worked, I had to learn how to build a website. I had to go through the crazy entrepreneur mistakes. Like, I think one of my first piece of clothing that I ever sold was actually a swimsuit. So I didn't even know what I was going to sell. I didn't know where I was going to get the merchandise from. And then one day, some crazy person purchased something from my website, and they purchased it, and I didn't even have the merchandise. So I had to work through buying something from overseas, because at the time I bought it from like AliExpress. And it took it like a whole month before it got to me. So this was an awful, but a growth experience that I had to learn before I found like retailers that were US based, and just kind of taught myself the A to Z of how to actually have a fashion brand. So that's actually how I got started. And it kind of grew into over a six-figure brand and what it is today.
Wow, that is an amazing story. And there is actually something, I'm kind of wiping a little tear from my eye, because when you mentioned, there was a trigger for me, because my dad, who passed away 2 years ago, he was an entrepreneur, and he was an insurance agent, but he sold clothes, and he sold women's clothing as well as men's suits. And when you were talking about selling out of the trunk of your car, and I'm like, that must be like where it starts, because I always remember him, no matter where we went. And he always said, like, you want to be able to catch a person when they're ready to spend money, right?
Absolutely.
And he had books, etc. So even when I became a published author, the first thing I did, I kept my box of books in my car, even though I had it on my website and it was on Amazon. So if a person said, "Oh, I want your book," there's no excuse. Here you go. So I love that. What made you decide, as you started to grow, you mentioned that you taught yourself to build and develop your own website, and then you had a few hiccups along the way, which is to be expected when you're launching a business, because we all have to grow, right? So how did you eventually navigate that piece where you were able to then redirect so that your merchandise could now come from US based facilities versus having that lag time with dealing with overseas merchants?
Well, I think initially just trying to understand the process, right? Because I didn't have, like I mentioned, mentors. And I did not know that there was a such thing as US based vendors. I just knew that I saw all of these other brands that were out there, because this was a time when Instagram was just kind of emerging. And so slowly I would see other larger brands. Like, I used to watch Fashion Bomb daily. I don't know if you're familiar with that platform, but they used to spotlight smaller boutique brands. And so I would start searching. I'm like, where are they getting this merchandise from? There has to be. And as I continue to self-educate, things like YouTube University, I have a couple of degrees from there. So just kind of Googling, wholesale retailers, and then just being diligent on locating that information. I stumbled up on what was called the Fashion District. And then it was like I struck gold.
Yeah. You are bringing back so many memories for me, because we used to also go to New York just to shop and find merchandise and things of that nature. And now my background is actually, I sew. I've been sewing since I was 10 years old. And so for me, like when you were talking about, wanting to make sure that, you had something for yourself also, I didn't want to dress like anybody else.
Can we talk about that for a moment?
Yes.
Another thing with the products that I was receiving from overseas, and it's not everything that I was receiving, but it was what I was receiving at the time. The quality was terrible. And then what I admired so much about Fashion Bomb Daily was the uniqueness that these smaller boutique and fashion brands had. Now, I didn't have the background of fashion or that I knew of, right? I was always just looking at fashion and I was just like, wow, she's cute. I could rock that. Or I would see the clothes and I would say, I saw that first, and I did not want to look like anyone else. And I think that my uniqueness from being from Chicago, being down in Houston, a lot of the women down there, they adapted to how I look. They never would really just say it, but they liked my style. And it was me just trying to be, trying to figure out who I was more so, and then realizing my own style, and then also putting that style of uniqueness within my own fashion brand. And that's where I feel like I hit also gold, was just kind of doing it how I did it, because then people would say, I don't see your clothes anywhere, and I would look for these vendors that no one could get. Like, I just want to be exclusive and I want my customers to be exclusive and feel exclusive. Like, there was a eureka moment where I would go to the clubs. Mind you, I grew my business in the clubs because that's who my target audience was. So I wanted to see what they were wearing. But have you ever had that moment where you stepped into the room and you have the same shirt on, pants on, boots on, scarf on, coat on, like another woman that's there? It's almost kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
And it's always like, I've had that happen to me a few times, and I've seen that happen to other women. And I would just be like, in the mall shopping, I don't want any of this stuff, because I just feel like the pool of variety of items that we had, it just sucked. So I always try to bring that through House of Divas, just that uniqueness.
Now with House of Divas, I know your store is, your boutique is actually in the south suburbs of Chicago in Homewood, which is in my area. Do you style your clients? Like, do you set appointments and kind of figure out what your clients or potential client style is, and figure out what's going to work for them? How do you walk me through that process?
So initially, that wasn't something that I even felt confident in. However, people kept finding the confidence within me to do so. So I was like, well, maybe. What happened was, initially online, because I started off as an online e-commerce brand, I would, when you walk into the store, you have the luxury of talking to one of the workers that are there, the employees that are there, and they can help you find whatever it is that you're looking for. And if you're in a store like Akira, for example, and you have a good style consultant that's there with you, helping you to pick out items, this person is going to walk you from A to Z. They want to know where you're going, what the temperature of the event is going to be. So I try to bring that momentum and that feeling to my online customers. So if you go to my website, the bubble that pops up, how can we help you? There is a virtual style consulting that is there, which is me, right? So it's me. And then making these personalized relationships with my customers, I would then just style myself. And so then if they're online, they'll usually say, hey, I'm looking for something for my birthday, anniversary, wedding, speaking engagement. And then I would kind of direct them or redirect them to what I think was best for them. These customers would also go as far as sending me their photos so that I can get their measurements, because I didn't know what the measurement thing, how that worked at first. I was like, well, send me a picture of you so I can see like your body's type. And then as I got the volume of customers that wanted that service, what ended up happening is I started perfecting it. So now I not only offer online virtual style consulting services, but I also offer, in-person services. So where you can come in, I get the temperature of what it is that you're wearing, where you're trying to go, what your body style is, what your likes, what your dislikes are. And we go from A to Z in the boutique. We're going to find you the right look. And if that takes time, it's about a 2-hour, 120-minute booking that you get. And then you leave with your clothes.
Okay. So I'm going to have to schedule, and I'm not really, I have some things coming up for 2022. For starters, I'm going to be 45. So I normally every year I do a photo shoot for my birthday and I come up with different themes. So
happy birthday. And I love transformations, like alter egos and bringing out that other side, but still connecting you to who you are. I think that's what's most impactful about styling someone, is you get to just allow them, and just my vision for House of Divas is show up in style and dress for what's next. So it's amazing where, you know, those photos will lead you, or just the feeling that you're going to get. Just, you know, 45, that's a milestone. So not only am I styling you, but I get to be a part of that experience, you know. And I think impact in fashion is what's most impactful to me, that I get to have that influence.
And I'm very excited. So just, you know, because even at the event that we attended, I know you styled Tiffany, and I was really digging her top, and you know, everything just was perfect. So one thing that I want to ask you is, with being your own boss, right? What you went out there and just made it happen for yourself. And for many people, they may kind of, you know, struggle with taking that leap. What would you say was the greatest challenge for you as you embarked upon this entrepreneurial journey?
I think ultimately the question that you're posing is fantastic, because I think for me, I just wanted to break generational curses, and I wanted to do something that I actually had never seen before, which is provide generational wealth for my children. I got tired of living paycheck to paycheck. I think at one point, after I fought so hard to get a degree because I had a GED, you know, and it was just kind of like so insulting to who I was as a person, as my characters. I wanted more for myself. And then after getting the degree, it's still like you're still basically making minimum wage. I think one moment I was a CEO on food stamps, you know, and I think just standing in there in the food stamp line for myself, just kind of looking at everyone else, and not to be judgmental to any of those people, but it was just kind of like, I just don't belong here. There has to be more. And I think that one of the toughest things that I had to kind of overcome, or just kind of resonate with, is I have to want more. And it hasn't been easy. Sometimes life will kind of push you out there, because I still was balancing being a corporatepreneur and an entrepreneur, because I was kind of like putting my feet lukewarm in the water without just kind of deeply diving in. But I was so unhappy at the workplace. I was on my phone helping customers all the time. And then I was over, you know, delivering on the initiatives that I was a part of. And unfortunately, I would get my check at the end of the week, and it would just be, I would be so stressed out trying to balance school, work, being a mother. And then I get this check and it looks like pennies. Whereas I go to a pop-up shop and I'm making what I've made in one day versus over a span of 80 hours. And so my time, so just kind of continuing to just kind of be prayerful, tell my husband what the vision is, just having a good support system, because I think that that's really important, because it's hard. You know, for me, I do have that cushion of support that's there, that, you know, I don't have to stress and worry about the bills, right? And some of us don't have that luxury. So let's not get it twisted, you know, to whereas you do need some type of exit strategy or exit plan if this is something that you're wanting to actually do, but also be strategic about how you're doing it. And I think I had a lot of strategy, because there is a time where I just quit my job altogether and went into it full force, but you never want to stop that cash flow. And I think just mistakes, trial and error helped me to understand that. So I would never just kind of recommend just quitting your job. I don't care how much you hate it. That is a form of cash flow. But I think for me, I think the balance with your question that I was able to find was, I still did have a job for the most part. And then what happened was, and I'm gonna tell you this, just wrapping up this question, is I ended up losing my job. But I was in the midst of fighting, you know, with time with the job, you know, like, this is taking too much of my time, but I'm not giving this 100%. I'm not adding value into this job. Like, God, what do I do? And I think that decision was made for me. So when it came time for them to fire me, I smiled. I was like, you know, it's time. And so it was confirmation. So just be prayerful.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you shared that part of your journey, because oftentimes people, when they're looking from the outside, they don't know, the journey that a person had to take to get to where they are today. They only see either the finished product or the work in progress, but the work in progress looks really good to that person who's, on the outside looking in. And I've had people to ask me like, well, why don't you do consulting work full time? Or why don't you, host your podcast full time? The fact of the matter is, I'm a divorced mom of 3. I need my paycheck. I need, make sure
Let's
that
be
I can
real,
right. And I also understand as well, like you talked about having that hustle mentality. When you are an entrepreneur, you've got to make sure that you're going to eat, right? So it's not, I can just kind of sit back, fall back and take a day off. It's really no days off when you are working for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm glad that, you highlighted that there's work. This is not, just a piece of cake. And you do have to have a plan in place, and you have to strategize. Would you say that as you have grown with your business, I know you mentioned that starting out, there were things that you did yourself, like, for instance, building your own website. Have you, when you were starting out, did you find yourself trying to do everything yourself? And then did you get to a point, whereas maybe with marketing and promotions, did you try to seek out assistance from other people who were experts, or have you just kind of focused in and honed in on your craft from that vantage point?
So initially, I was everything in the business. I was finance, I was marketing, I was shipping and receiving, I was everything. And then as I began to grow, and then as social media became just a larger platform, I began to seek help in the areas that I could afford. For example, I think marketing wise, I started doing what's now influencer marketing. I used to pay influencers. I used to pay to get on sites, on platforms like Fashion Bomb Daily. And it was awful. It was really awful, because I think one time, I had one of my photos on the shade room. Like, why is my picture on this? Why am I marketing on the shade room? That's real. What are they going to do on the shade room? The platform is built to tear you down, and it's not, even though they'll take your money. But back then, again, these are all the different players. So I did go into marketing. I did marketing with people such as the real BB Judy. I don't know her. She has the Miracle Drops.
Yeah.
There were people like Black China before her platform kind of went somewhere else, and Monica. There were, in other words, I did use celebrity influencers to push the brand, because I saw that they could push my brand even further, which was marketing. That's kind of where I started, because everywhere else during the time I could not afford. And then as I grew, I realized, as you get more experience and you begin to make the money, I reinvested into myself and the brand, which is where wisdom kind of comes in. And I did things like, okay, let's wrap up some of this branding, let's pull this all together so everything looks cohesive. And then as I began to take steps that way, then I looked at, okay, now we really need an accountant, now we really need, a team, right? When we're at these pop-up shops. So now I do have a very small team. It's not the biggest team, but it is a very small team. And my family was always my first team. My mother was my first photographer. My husband was my first photographer. My brother, they all helped me with packaging, and I always bounced ideas off of them. And, I couldn't pay them, but their information was vital. I walked into my boutique yesterday, being a mother, and I'm getting ready to go out to Mexico. And I was kind of stressed because my employee has not been there because she's been out sick. I walked into my boutique yesterday, and all of our Black Friday orders were already packaged up and shipped and ready to go. And the feeling of that, I think when I first hired my first employee, I was at a restaurant with my husband, because I didn't learn to develop a team truly until I got pregnant with my third son. And I wanted to continue to keep the brand afloat. And that's kind of how I learned I need a team.
Yes.
And the feeling of being somewhere else, but the work is still getting done as the CO, it's the best feeling in the world. So you just kind of, if you want to grow as a brand, you have to be able to allow yourself to grow in those areas. And so you need to step out of the positions where you once had to do everything and allow the experts to kind of come in and take charge.
That's great advice. What would you say? What would you say has been the greatest highlight so far for you with House of Divas?
The greatest highlight is the connections that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that originally I knew who I was as a teenager building this brand. I don't think that I even knew who I was as a teen mom.
Mm-hmm.
And as an adult, I think really I didn't understand what the brand even meant to other people until just a couple of years ago. So having that impact of people saying like, wow, you're such an inspiration to me. How can I also do this? When I co-authored my first book and I talked about the wardrobe phase, which is something that you briefly mentioned about people don't see what it took for you to get there. They don't see the wardrobe change that's happening behind stage. They don't see the malfunctions, right? They only see you show up looking beautiful. Think of, when you go to these Grammys or when these celebrities get on stage, we don't know what it is that they're actually dealing with. And so for me, just to have a brand that I know saved my life
Mm-hmm.
is kind of the highlight for me, because if it did this to me and I'm pushing this love and this inspiration, I'm only getting just the fickle point or the surface level of what it's doing for everyone else. And it's just it's rewarding in that sense.
That's great. You mentioned that you co-authored a book, but you also published your own bestseller, right? Secrets from a House of Divas, 10 Success Secrets That Never Go Out of Style. Can you talk to us? What was the inspiration behind that book?
You know what? That that book is kind of interesting because that wasn't even the book that I was actually trying to push originally or organically. And I hope that the first book eventually comes out so that I can kind of tell that story. But the House of Divas, The Secrets of a House of Divas, it kind of came, I just knew I wanted to be an author. I just knew that with being pregnant with my third son, that this book had to get published. And I didn't have the title of the book. I didn't have the meat and potatoes of the book. I just knew that I had this book. So the book and where it actually, how it formed, came from a true place of heart. It came from all of my secrets of just being vulnerable, because I struggled with being vulnerable and transparent, which I think was holding me back from a lot of things as far as being an entrepreneur, because I couldn't relate, or I couldn't allow people to relate to who I was because I looked so perfect,
Yeah.
my pictures looked perfect, I showed up perfect, but you don't really know about the tears that I cried. You don't really know how many times that I had to get my income tax check to start over. And so I'm talking about all of these secrets that I used that were universal business tactics that I didn't even know that they were at the time, that helped me to be a success. And that's why it's 10 success secrets that never go out of style, because it doesn't matter where you are in business and it doesn't matter the industry that you're in, you can use any of these. So we talk about things like marketing, accounting, just building your team. And then the way that I tell this story is I talk about all of the women who have influenced me in my life. I talk about my grandmother, my mom, my late aunt, unfortunately, how I could smell the, what was the perfume that she used to wear with the meat coats? I talk about all of this, but I talk about the uniqueness and style and being okay with being who you are and how your style can allow you to show up. So the book, once the book was done,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked at the title and I looked at the chapters and I looked at my position, I was wowed and amazed myself, to be
Yeah.
honest, because it's really a good read. It's really a good read for someone that doesn't have a mentor, who's looking for mentorships, because there are coaching call to actions at the end of each chapter. So
Okay.
you're learning how to build your own. Um, and it just talks about everything. It's my heart. It's truly my baby. And wow, wow.
I think one of the things that you touched upon that is I think is so incredibly important is being transparent, because people need to be able to relate to you, especially when you do have a brand. I have shared my story with people because, as you were talking about how people, think you're perfect or see you as being perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I hear, even as someone who is divorced and has 3 teenage children, people they know what I do professionally. They see my posts, and it's not that I'm posting like just all of the positive things.
Mm-hmm.
But when, they sit down and actually talk to me, or if they read my book, because my book is actually about motherhood, single parenting. And that looks different for different people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually share your story, there's going to always be at least one person who can relate to something that you've gone through, to, whatever a struggle or trial or tribulation that you've gone through. And by sharing your story, you're helping someone else who may not know how to get through a difficult time. There may be a teen mom out there who, like you, likes to dress, still want to be able to go out, look good, but can't balance financially, trying to have the nice clothes and trying to take care of their child, but know that they want something different, and they can look at you as that inspiration, to say, this is something that I could potentially do.
Absolutely. And it is for us to share our platforms and our stories so that we can give our gifts to the next person. You never know whose life you're truly saving.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about wanting to break a generational curse and wanting to make sure that you provide generational wealth and a legacy for your children. What's the one thing, and I don't know how old your boys are, but what is it that you want them to learn or take from the work that you're currently embarked upon?
So my oldest is 15, my middle son is 8.5, and then my youngest is 9 months. Well, he's 8 months.
Oh my goodness.
He just made 8 months. I'm sorry. Yeah, they're
Oh,
all
are
7.
you getting any sleep?
No, I have scheduled sleep in. But they're all about 7.5 years age difference.
Right.
And I want them to all see that, one, I'm following my dreams and I'm not settling. Two, education is important. It doesn't matter what you decide to do with it, your education is still key. Three, I think that with my oldest son, Arion, I think I want him to kind of freely discover who he is and discover or determine what his plan is. But I also want to bring him in on just being able to expose him to things that my parents didn't know, that I wasn't exposed to: financial literacy, putting him in the room, right?
Yes.
Showcasing, what it looks like to be in real estate or owning property, or just have what the ins and out of hard work is. Sometimes we teach this logic if our children are on sports teams, but then it's also helping to teach this logic when they're also children of entrepreneurs. So I have them all come in and take part. At one point in time, my oldest son, Arion, he was also my photographer if my husband had to be on the road, or if my mother couldn't be the photographer. And I would show him his work, and I would show him the rewards, and I would show him that, and pay him, right? So I'm your first employer. Let's also learn how we can save. What are you saving for? Let's get a bank account. I did not have those things shown to me as a child. I had to literally learn on my own how to get a bank account, something as simple as that. So having a business with children, I get to show them and they get to see the fruits of the labor. And then they get to see in the real world, in real time, what's also happening. And I think a part of them also, they get a kick out of, we're going to the boutique today. Okay,
Yeah.
they get to see all of this happening. And I think that I don't want them ever to forget what it looked like, because they get to see the tears too. So
Yeah.
I think that what I want them to do at the end of the day is just to remember the hard work that their mother put forth trying to do, their mother and father, actually.
Yeah. That's good. That is really, really good. I think, and though your children, maybe they may not say anything or acknowledge the hard work that you're doing, I will say from experience, they're paying attention. And they will acknowledge you when you least expect
Yeah.
it. So that,
Yeah.
and you just never know what type of impact you're
Mhm.
making on your children. I know I certainly did not. And then even with just parenting in general, like you're as parents, we always want our children to do better than what
Sure.
we've done, right? And we share all of these lessons, and of course, we think it's going in one ear out the other because of their response or lack thereof. But I will tell you, I will just say that the last few months, I've seen it in ways that I just didn't expect, just some of the lessons that I was teaching, or just some of my colorful commentary that I have been able to kind of, hear my children talking to other people. I had an opportunity. My son is a part of 100 Black Men of Chicago.
Oh, nice.
And they've been doing their, so he's been involved since 8th grade, and they've been doing their mentoring sessions the last year or so, online. And I was listening to him. He still doesn't know. So if he hears this, but he was on his call, and he was sharing advice to like the younger students about preparing for college, and some of the things that he was saying to them were, words of wisdom, I guess, that I shared with him, but just other things. So I just, our children are always watching.
Always, yeah.
Always. And they can see what it means to work hard and how that hard work is going to pay off as well. And I think that it makes them better for society as well, because now watching you as their mom, who's, developed this brand, they have options.
They have options. Exactly. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was having a conversation with my oldest son this morning, and we're just talking about school and college and just whatever his decision is. I'm like, whatever your decision is, because he's super smart, but he gets to this area of, I know I'm good. I've mastered that. Like, he's like that at sports too. He's like, I can do it. You guys know I'm like the best at it. So it's whatever. And I'm like, why do you have that mentality sometimes? Because it shows in his grades as well. And I'm just like, this isn't you. You want to make sure that you have the grades to support whatever life decision that you have. And it doesn't matter if you want to go to this school or not. So I posed the question, what school do you want to go to? And he was kind of talking about, he didn't know, but it was like narrowed down to 3. And I said, well, do you want those 3 to choose you, or do you want to choose them?
Right.
And or do you want to have the option of, they don't want you all together because you don't have anything of value to add to them? And so I just kind of put it into perspective for him. And I think that your comment about kids are always listening is very true. My middle son, Destin, it will amaze you some of the things that he says. And it's just kind of like, you're taken back, because he's so wise for his age, but it's because of the information, and we're just educating and exposing and just allowing them to have that exposure at such an early age. It is our duty, to do and speak to them in the form of, like you just said, he was mentoring or speaking back to someone else. So as long as we do what we're supposed to do, I think it'll take it. So, and I'm like that with my parents as well. I think about stuff that they tell me, and I'm just kind of like, oh, it makes sense now. So I tease and say, you're going to thank me later. And so I'm just waiting on some of those later moments, but at later is when I'll be smiling, because I did my due diligence as a mom.
Absolutely. what would you say? I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What would you say is the most rewarding position that you have?
Oh, wow. It's almost like, do we want to say mom or do you want to say being a wife? It's just, no, but it is rewarding being a mother, because I've learned so much. I learned so much being a mom. It's just kind of like my children saved my life. I don't want you to make me tear up or anything like that, but my children truly, genuinely saved my life. My oldest son helped me to birth the House of Divas. My youngest son, unfortunately, my grandmother that I talk so highly about, she passed away, unfortunately, 2 days before he was even born, abruptly. And I was just blown away by the thought of losing my grandmother so unexpectedly. And so he saved my life during that time frame. And then with my youngest son, Legend, this is how Mommy Making Millions was birthed, because I went through a season of, at the peak of my brand, at the peak of the pandemic, at the most profitable time of having House of Divas, I became pregnant. Now I'm still the model, get you right about the hats. And I didn't know how, right? Because I still was developing that team. And I was like, God, why would you do this to me? I just got the keys to my showroom. Like, what's happening here? And I saw so much failure in what I was trying to do. And then I think as mompreneurs, we think that we can't continue to live our lives because we have children, or we put so much stuff on hold. And I was in the middle of writing that book. And I think I was telling my publicist, like, no, this book has to go forth. She would be like, take your time, get some rest. Don't worry about the deadline. I would be like, no, we have to get this done, and then I would have so many women who would tell me I was an inspiration, regardless of how I showed up, where I was dying, truly dying inside. And that's the essence of how Mommy Making Millions was actually birthed. It is out of our darkness is where we elevate. And it's so rewarding being a mother, because it has so many rewarding benefits. And that's just a few of my benefits, is just being obedient to the calling of mother, being a mother, because I could have not had the children, right? And so just fighting through whatever life has ever thrown at me with being a mother, I've always figured it out. And that's one of the reasons why I was in that food stamp line one day, humbling myself, because I knew at the end of the day, although I'm trying to follow this dream, I have to be real with the mouths that I'm feeding. And until I get to that next level, I want to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as a mom. So I think that was a long-winded answer, but I think hopefully that painted a picture for someone, because I've never truly just gave it raw like that.
Yeah. I'm trying not to, so look, I'm going to try not to cry, because look, there are just so many different thoughts. When I think about the sacrifices that we make as mothers, that, people don't even realize, and that your children don't realize, but at the same time, how your children can truly save your life. And, because I tell people all the time that for me, the greatest title that I have is that of being a mother. Everything else is secondary, because for myself, I struggled with my twins. I struggled getting them here.
Wow.
So every time I look at them, they're seniors in high school now. And I'm looking at these babies who I almost lost them when I was 5 months pregnant. Then to delivering them a month early, and them being in the NICU. And now they're 17, and in 6 months, they'll be 18 and get ready to go to college. And I'm just like in amazement, because I remember being in the hospital room, just crying and praying to God, like, if you please just let me deliver them, I will be the best mother that I know how, because that was just really important to me, to be able to get them here, So it's, and they came at a time that I didn't realize that I needed them. So it's just, like when you start peeling back, like the layers,
it gets deep, girl. It gets deep. And that's why I'm like, that house secrets of a house of divas, I was able to peel
Mhm.
off everything. And then once you kind of come into essence with understanding why those layers were even there to begin with, it just makes the substance of who you are as a person even more sweet.
Right. Absolutely. You have something coming up next week where you're going to you're doing a mommyspreneur brunch. Mommies. What
Yes, mom and mimosas.
Mom
Right.
and
Yeah.
mimosas. How did I forget the mimosas? Moms
Yes.
need mimosas.
Mom and mimosas, entrepreneur or mompreneur, right?
Yes.
Mastermind mixer, where we are, it's actually one of my first events. I have so many ideas a lot of times that God gives me the vision and the provision, and I fail to execute. But this one, I was like, no, we're doing this. So I'm truly excited. It is December 11th, and we're going to be bringing together mompreneurs from the Chicagoland area. It is a time for us to brunch, network, and just have a candid conversation around just what it looks like to be a mompreneur, where we're going, what's our focus for 2020, some 2020 vision alignment strategies, and just kind of have a moment to just go, you
Yeah.
know, when was the last time you brunched with some ladies or just had a mimosa with some ladies and just had a moment for you, right? We give so much to our children and our businesses and our spouses or our jobs, but then we are shortchanging ourselves or just, not even taking the time to appreciate and just have a moment where we can kind of connect. And it's so many women that fail to connect with other amazing women. So I want to challenge other women to come out and have that opportunity on next Saturday.
That's awesome. Where can people get tickets? Do you still have tickets available?
I
Or
think I have like 5 tickets left at this point.
okay.
I have
All
five.
right.
So
So people got to hurry up and hopefully be able to get
yes,
tickets.
but this won't be the last of many. This is the first.
Okay.
This is breaking the seal off of the Mommy Making Millions platform, and people can still get tickets on Eventbrite. I'll post the information. I'll send you the information so you can put it inside of the podcast,
Yeah.
as well as the information is posted on my Instagram, Marquita Johnson. There is a link there for you to actually purchase tickets. Our Mommy Making Millions website will
Mhm.
actually launch that week as well. So the website is mommymakingmillions.com, but it's not readily available yet.
Okay. Well, we've got something to look out for. And tell people again, how can they find you on social media and how can they find House of Divas as well?
So on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, I am just Marquita Johnson. That's MarquittaDashae. And for House of Divas, right? You can shop online at houseofdivas.com. That's HOUSEDIVAHS, right?
Mhm.
.com. And Divas is actually an acronym. I know a lot of people would say, why do you spell Divas that way? It's actually an acronym.
Okay.
So it does have a DIVAHS on the end. And then you can also find us at on Instagram or Facebook as well. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, I really thank you for taking just a little bit of time out of your day to talk to me and to share a little bit of your story. I would love to invite you back to Light It Up because I am sure that there's so much more that we could talk about that will be very beneficial to the listeners. So thank you so much for joining me. And we got to set up an appointment too, because
No, thank you for having me. And I look forward to just the continuous relationship that we build. I think you're what you're doing is absolutely beautiful. I think that even just for seeing someone like me and giving me the opportunity on your platform is a true blessing. And I just thank you and may, God continue to bless you in what you're doing in this season of communicating and networking with the rest of the world.
Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for joining us this week on Light It Up. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Light It Up Podcast. That's LITEITPODCAST. Also, make sure you share this episode with a friend. And as you know, you can always Tune in for a fresh episode of Light It Up every Tuesday beginning at 7 a.m. So, as always, please remember to continue to light it up and shine bright like a diamond. Thanks for joining me this week on Light It Up. Make sure you visit my website at www.lightituppodcast.com or www.aginahmuhammad.com. You can also find me on social media using the handle @LightItUpPodcast. If you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time, light it up and shine bright like a diamond.